Hello everyone and welcome to my new video, a top 10 countdown of my favourite superhero soundtracks. Frequent viewers of my retrospective reviews will know I'm a big fan of movie soundtracks and try to do my best to cover them when reviewing a film. I get asked a lot what my favourite score is, and today I thought I'd share with you guys my list of favourite superhero scores. Comic book movies are often the time a composer can stamp their musical abilities on the genre and to get their work heard by a wider audience, so making something epic and memorable is important. For the soundtrack to make my list, it first has to be a live action film, have a memorable main theme tune that fits well with the character, and the rest of the soundtrack has to stand on its own. It can't just have a good main theme and the rest of the music just be forgettable and bland, which is common. The whole of the soundtrack has to work with the movie and be enjoyable as a separate piece to the film. So, let's get started. Number 10. The Green Lantern. Composer James Newton Howard makes a great attempt to give a musical voice to the Green Lantern and his world. This being the first feature film based on the character, the movie failed to live up to expectations and wasn't received well by critics and the fans. Me personally, I have a soft spot for this movie, and the score plays a big part of that. The opening march is very short, but has the familiar build-up notes you find in the more successful superhero themes. The introduction of Oa, and when we see Green Lantern fly for the first time, the music really gives life to the alien world, and is a very creative bit of music. But a standout piece on the soundtrack and in the film is the final confrontation between Green Lantern and Parallax. This is a wonderful section of writing. The Green Lantern theme is woven into the action cues and is so playful as it gets more and more frantic. James co-wrote the score to Batman Begins and The Dark Knight with Hans Zimmer. The score to Green Lantern clearly shows he can tackle the genre confidently by himself. Number 9. The Amazing Spider-Man, composed by James Horner. Now some of you are probably thinking, what about Danny Elfman's scores? When I first saw Spider-Man in 2002 and heard the theme, it just didn't gel with me. It was well written music, but to my ears it didn't fit Spider-Man. It sounded a bit too gothic for my liking. However, I did love Christopher Young's contributions on Spider-Man 3. Come 2012, with Sony's attempts to keep hold of the Spider-Man license with a restart of the series, the director Mark Webb brought on the late James Horner. Horner hadn't worked on a comic book movie since The Rocketeer, and had been ignored for the past decade with the popularity of superheroes dominating the box office. Horner brings a new musical sound to Spider-Man, going in a completely different direction, and to me introduces a heroic theme that nicely fits with Spider-Man. The simple but effective piano melody that opens the film and runs throughout perfectly captures Peter's more emotional moments and his romance with Gwen. Horner builds upon that theme to an epic conclusion when he saves New York. He makes use of electronic percussion throughout the score, but doesn't overdo it and concentrates on giving the orchestral section of his score centre stage. It's a rich and colourful soundtrack that surpasses Danny Elfman's work. It's a shame Horner didn't return to build upon his existing material with Spider-Man 2. But he read the script and thought it was rubbish, so he turned it down and he was replaced by Hans Zimmer and 6 other musicians, forming this supergroup called the Magnificent Six. Gone was James Horner's themes and replaced with a mind-numbing soundtrack and a main theme that sounded like a rejected march for the Olympics. Number 8. The Phantom, composed by David Newman. To date, this is his only comic book score. The movie was unfortunately a box office bomb and drifted into obscurity during the recent boom of superhero movies. Comic book fans returned to this forgotten film and found an enjoyable action-adventure movie with enough charm and character for it to be given a second chance. To the movie's benefit, it came attached with a great musical score that captures its time period and homages the action serials of the 30s and 40s, very much like John Williams' work on Indiana Jones. But Newman doesn't completely follow a classical approach, throwing in electronic percussion for the action sequences that is nicely woven into the mix. It contains classic scoring methods, but he does it in a more contemporary way. The main theme for the enemy Drax very much relies on electronic beats and melodies mixed with orchestral percussion. There is use of exotic flutes for the moments when the Phantom returns to his home in the jungle, so there is great variety. The best moment of the soundtrack is when Newman gets to write for the action set pieces, with the Phantom's attempts to save his friend Diane. Heavy drums thrown into the mix and a great rendition of the Phantom's main theme is what capitalises on his heroic antics. Number 7. Captain America the First Avenger, composed by Alan Silvestri. Alan already had some experience dealing with comic book movies with his work on Judge Dredd in 1995. Before Captain America came out, I was excited to hear what Alan could bring to the table, and he didn't disappoint. The big main theme for Steve Rogers dominates the end credits, a classic theme that captures that time period and gives us an epic theme for Captain America, which as far as I'm concerned he never really had one. His march is used throughout the film but in a slower, more subtle way. The rest of the soundtrack, Alan brings along his tried and trusted action cues. A perfect example on the soundtrack is titled Kruger Chase. Steve chases the German hitman through the streets, and it's accompanied by Silvestri's classic style. It's that sound you come to admire from his scores. The soundtrack is Alan on top form, a big bombastic score done the old-fashioned way. There is no repetitive electronic loops and drums that you find in 90% of action scores today. It's a shame he wasn't brought back for the sequel. He was replaced by Henry Jackman, who provided, in my opinion, one of his weakest scores. Number 6. X-Men The Last Stand, composed by John Powell. Fans were desperate for the third movie in the series thanks to the quality of X-Men 2, with Bryan Singer jumping ship to do Superman Returns, as does the composer John Ottman. We see a change of director, and Brett Ratner went with a surprise choice of British composer John Powell. John at that point had been providing very electronically heavy soundtracks for the likes of the Jason Bourne films, and worked closely with Hans Zimmer in the past, so people were predicting similar results for X-Men 3. But there was a surprise to many when he came out with a full-blown orchestra, which he was very much skilled in. The main theme does sound a little like John Williams' Superman March, with a similar build-up to the main theme. In my opinion, Powell tries to give the score that John Williams flavour. It's a grand big score that at its core is the Phoenix March that really amps up at the end. All the emotion and hatred she has inside her just explodes, and so does the music. The film has obvious problems, but the music really delivers a cracking finale. One of the highlights for me is when the X-Men turn up at Alcatraz and the build-up of the main march kicks in as they jump into action to save the day. Excellent work by Powell. John Ottman's theme for X-Men 2 and Days of Future Past is probably a bit more impressive than Powell's, but judging the score as a whole, X-Men 3 comes out the best of the long-running series. Number 5. Thor, composed by Patrick Doyle. Scottish composer Patrick Doyle and frequent collaborator with Kenneth Branagh provides his first superhero score and his only one to date. Patrick has provided scores to a huge range of films and doesn't always tend to gravitate towards big commercial movies, but he has contributed his talents to the Harry Potter series and kicked off the reboot to the Planet of the Apes franchise. Some had criticised Doyle's attempts to adapt the musical style of Hans Zimmer to the score, going with the trend at the time. He does make use of the looped percussions and string technique that has that familiar sound, evident in the Frost Giant battle. This approach can take away its own identity, but thankfully, like Jerry Goldsmith, he mixes it with the orchestra to create this soundscape that enhances the action and more emotional moments. The theme of Odin throws you into the realm of fantasy. He brings that world to life. The best piece is the end titles, which on the soundtrack is called Thor Kills the Destroyer. All the emotion and heart and grandness accumulates into one epic piece. A big problem with the modern Marvel movies, there is no continuity with the music. Another composer jumps on for the sequel and wants to do their own thing, which is fine. They want to push themselves creatively, but there are barely any attempts to call upon the theme set up in the first film. Come Thor 2, Brian Tyler ditches Patrick's work and replaces it with something entirely forgettable. I was a bit annoyed when I saw the film and heard the new music. It would be great to see Patrick Doyle return to the genre, because he clearly knows what he is doing. Number 4. Supergirl the Movie, composed by Jerry Goldsmith. Jerry Goldsmith brings the musical voice of Supergirl to life with this epic score. Jerry was originally going to compose the score to Superman, having worked with Richard Donner on The Omen, but was unavailable and John Williams took over. Come 1984, Jerry got his chance to provide his talents to the Super family. The main theme is instantly recognisable and is complemented by a whooshing synth sound, which does make it sound a little dated, but that doesn't matter. The energy and sense of excitement is clearly there. Every track on the Supergirl score is a joy to listen to. A few examples, such as her arrival on Earth, her seeing the Superman poster, the monster tractor that attacks the town, her first battle with the demon who then materialises in its true form at the end, her escape from the Phantom Zone, and the final confrontation between Selina and Supergirl. One of the great moments of music during this scene is when she is trapped in the monster's hands, and the spirit of Zoltar speaks to her to give her confidence in herself, and she escapes and finishes off the demon and Selina. This kind of music is what I love, rich and multi-layered with themes that work perfectly when called for. The film may be pretty silly and have a poor script, but its score is incredible. Number 3. The Shadow, composed by Jerry Goldsmith. We have another Goldsmith score. 1994, he brought The Shadow to life with a rousing score full of mystery and atmosphere. Jerry doesn't let up when it comes to the action, having vast experience in providing action music. When the Shadow jumps in to save the day, the music follows suit and delivers on all fronts. The main theme is introduced straight away as the movie starts and is mixed with the love theme for Lamont Cranston and Margot Lane. The March for the Shadow is called upon throughout the score, but in a very subtle way, just having it played out slowly, sometimes with the use of a synthesizer, which Jerry often liked to incorporate in his scores. He never relied heavily on them, but mixing with the orchestra and how it was arranged, it made it blend so seamlessly. The highlights of the score are the face-off between Khan and the Shadow in the Hall of Mirrors. These energetic beats as the Shadow chases after Khan and finds himself surrounded by mirrors. With his powers, he cracks the glass and strikes Khan with a piece of glass to the head. The music just keeps building and building up to this epic conclusion. Like some of the films on the list, the movies have their problems, but their scores all deliver, and with Jerry Goldsmith at the helm, you're in for a real treat. Number 2. Batman, composed by Danny Elfman. In 1989, Batman was a huge success and took the world by storm. Its great visuals were brought to life by Elfman's gothic and atmospheric score. The main theme was full of energy and aggression. The Batman theme itself is relatively short. The big march is just over a minute long till it loses its momentum, but when used in the film as part of the action set pieces, it works so well. The beauty of the score and why it's so high on the list is that it works independently from the film. You can happily enjoy it on its own without having to watch the movie. The music perfectly visualises the film in your head when you listen to it. The standout tracks for the score is the attack on Axis Chemicals, saving Vicky Vale from the Joker, the return to the Batcave, and the finale as they show off the new Bat Signal. It's so operatic, it's got that sound of classic Universal horror movies, with Phantom of the Opera thrown in to sweeten the deal. Danny returned to do the sequel Batman Returns, bringing on new material, but it lacked the roughness and aggressiveness of the original movie. His main theme was used in the animated cartoons, further enforcing that his music was Batman's theme, and nothing could compete with it. Now before we get to number 1, there are a number of scores that didn't quite make the list. We have Danny Elfman's work on Dick Tracy and Darkman. Both scores are great to listen to and are full of character, but with them being produced around the same time as Batman, they do unfortunately sound very similar, and you can't help but notice he's repeating himself a lot. John Dupree's work on Ninja Turtles is fantastic, great theme for the Green Heroes, and an emotional core to the score with the tender moments between the Turtles and Splinter. This would definitely be on my top 10 list if his work was readily available. Only a couple of tracks were released at the time and nothing since. A highly underrated score that is in dire need of an expanded release. Alan Silvestri's work on Stallone's Judge Dredd. The more I listen to the score, I find it's not really suited to the character. It's a big bombastic military soundtrack with heroic themes woven into it. It doesn't really capture the essence of the character. It would perfectly fit, say, Iron Man for example, but for Dredd, not really. Great music though, it's definitely worth adding to your collection. Finally we have The Crow, composed by Graham Revell. Graham is certainly no stranger to comic book scores. He worked on Tank Girl, The Crow sequel, and Daredevil. The score to the 1994 cult classic is full of emotion and darkness. It doesn't have a strong main theme, but an emotional and gothic sound that becomes more powerful when you know Brandon Lee died on set. Now it's time to reveal my number 1 favourite superhero soundtrack, Superman the Movie. Of course Superman had to be number 1. John Williams is the master, and having the best composer in the industry take on the first true serious adaptation of a comic book hero is a match made in heaven. This would be the only superhero score he would work on, despite being asked to provide music for other superhero movies throughout the years. He did, however, provide additional themes for Superman 4, while his good friend Alexander Courage took on the duties of composing the rest of the music. John Williams provides the ultimate theme to bring Superman to the big screen. The march speaks the word Superman on cue when the title blasts on screen. The main theme beautifully transitions into the love theme and then builds up for an epic conclusion. Williams provides memorable music for the rest of the film, such as Krypton, The Fortress of Solitude, the tender moments between Lois and Superman, and the introduction of Lex Luthor, which is called the March of the Villains on the soundtrack. The whole score works on every level. Every track is full of character and detail. So much of it is inspiring. One of the big highlights for me is the creation of the Fortress of Solitude, seeing the green crystal create this ginormous crystal structure from the ice. The music is just so magical and throws you into a fantasy world as you witness Superman's new home being created in all its glory. He enters the fortress and talks to Jor-El via recorded messages, and he's there for 12 years. Time flies by because John Williams' music has that dreamlike feel to it until you see Superman in his true form, wearing his outfit, and the main theme kicks in. When you see him fly at screen, you will believe a man can fly, and the music confirms it. Like many of John Williams' scores, they are a musical treat, and being performed by an orchestra, it never dates and remains timeless. Well everyone, I hope you enjoyed my list. I'm sure some of you will disagree with me, but these are my personal favourites. Some of you may have expected me to mention The Dark Knight or Man of Steel. I enjoy Hans Zimmer's scores, but there is a lot of repetition in his music. If it was a top 20 list, then I'm sure they would have made an appearance. If you have your own list you'd like to share with me, let me know in the comments section below. Okay everyone, take care and goodbye. If you enjoyed the video, you can find more on my YouTube channel, and also you can follow me on Twitter. If you want to help support the channel, you can donate through Patreon and receive monthly perks such as updates on the latest news on my channel, early access to reviews and commentaries before they go live on YouTube. Even the smallest donation can help keep this channel going. Thank you.